the failure actually teaches you more than the products that worked out, right? So kind of in terms of learning, look, you can never always get it right. That's as simple as that. No matter how smart a group of people or the strategy where the company resources are, we all put things in resumes and in LinkedIn's that chronologically make you feel like all these are such beautiful, linear, one after the other move. And the reality is different. All of us have different. Mine is different too, right? I've gotten rejected in interviews in the same companies that I work in later successfully. I've been stuck at a level and, it's like, hey, why am I not getting promoted? What's going on? I'm doing everything right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Product Folks podcast, where we speak to founders and product leaders from across the world and learn from them. Today we have a very special guest with us, Amit Fulay, who is the VP of Product at Microsoft, overlooking one of their most successful products in the last few years, Microsoft Teams. I'm pretty sure most of you would be like a daily active user of the product, but it doesn't stop there. He has close to 2 decades of experience building products at the largest scale possible at Facebook and Google. So if you have used either the FB newsfeed or Google Meet, he has done a lot of foundational work for these products and many more, right? So Amit, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Aditya. Thanks for having me. I must say, I'm really excited to talk to you and the product folks. Commend you on building a pretty large community now. I've been following your progress. It's been great. I spoke at an event in Bangalore earlier this year with the product folks. I got a chance to meet a lot of people in person. So it's great. It's great to see you.
Thanks so much, Amit. It's all because of the support of people like you that the community has been thriving. So we'll get right into it. I had a different question in mind, but while doing the intro, I realized that literally most of the people on internet today would have used at least one of the products, if not more, that you have built. So that's insanely impactful, right? Building products used by billions of people, and that too multiple times over at Google, Facebook, and now at Microsoft again. Not many people in the world can claim this, right? How does it make you feel personally by doing so much work that impacts billions of people across the world?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's I would say I've been super lucky to have had the opportunity, right, to work in all these places and all these products. It definitely feels great. You learn a lot. I always remind myself in the day-to-day and the teams that I work with is, the implications of even the smallest of decisions that we make in a conference room, in a virtual meeting, on some design choice or some feature we decide to roll forward, roll back, try out, has an impact on a lot of people's daily lives, right? Because they probably use one of these products to get their work done, to catch up. Just knowing that, being aware of that, it's both a responsibility and a privilege. That's how I see it, because you want to make sure we are thoughtful and responsible in your decisions and how you build the product, quality product. And it's an honor to do that, right? We all dream of working on things that are used by many and impact many. So the way I think of impact is really it's a responsibility. It's a privilege to be able to do that. I have been very lucky that I get to work on these products.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about all of these products that you have built, but we'll start with Microsoft Teams, since that's the active product that you're working on right now. And Teams is a product that people use for hours every day. People spend more than half of their waking hours doing work, and all of us often talk about the future of work, but tools like Teams have the biggest impact or responsibility of how work shapes up and gives us new ways to collaborate, right? So how do you decide what to build at Microsoft Teams? What are things of consideration that go into it? And when you're taking a long shot, wherein you're planning for, say, 3 years, 5 years down the line, what goes into the process of deciding what to build?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me speak for Teams. And I think it's, as you know, every time this is more of an art, not an exact science, how you decide what to build. But roughly, there's a few categories of our product investments, right? And I think at a high level, we're always focused on the fundamentals, right? And the fundamentals are, both from an experience standpoint as well as, engineering standpoint, reliability, performance of the app. And there's a lot of catching up we had to do because, see, Teams saw, it was an early product. It saw an explosive growth during the pandemic. And, just to serve the users and, respond to their feature requests, we had to do a lot of work. And you tend to accumulate some amount of technical debt when you have that rapid growth. So a lot of our fundamentals work is focused on that, focused on the experience. So that's kind of bucket number one. We're also doing a lot of work with the new emergent AI capabilities, right? Like it's really unlocked a lot of stuff. We have a meetings copilot, Teams copilot that, we have it some early preview. We're learning from data and learning from feedback. That's a big investment for us. And the way we're approaching that is, as you said, Aditya, like a lot of people spend their working time in Teams. And so how do we make it more efficient across the board, right? How I've been looking for information. Do you have to dig in multiple chats and things that we share for you to get an answer? Can the AI and the Copilot help you there? We talked about meetings fatigue, especially in the remote work. How can that be more helpful? So really our focus there is around, because you're spending so much time in Teams, it's almost like the operating system for your work. How do we make that more easy, more efficient, and give you time back, honestly? Because that's really the purpose of the software. So that's bucket number two. We're doing a lot of work on AI. And then we are also, we have emerging segments that we work, that we, serve users in, whether it's consumers, whether it's small businesses. Their needs can typically be different from enterprises. So there's some dedicated work we do for that, right? So in a sense that at a broad level, we have these buckets of investment and we make sure we are, balancing a portfolio accordingly, right? And that can vary over time. Like AI is a new emerging thing. We weren't doing it, I would say 2 years ago, but it's a huge focus for us now. And we have, many other areas like Teams Phone, where we can replace your PBX system with our stuff, devices. So there's some amount of work we do there as well. But I would say, look, at the most important thing is the way to think about how we do all of these things is, what does the user need? What makes their life easy, right? And that's really try to focus on.
Absolutely. And one of the things that, since you're talking about Microsoft now, one of the things that it feels from the outside at least is Microsoft has been very aggressive when it comes to new product launches, taking a stab at new verticals like, say, AI. Microsoft already has like fleshed out products like, say, Copilot and even for Teams that you mentioned, right? And incidentally, you started your career at Microsoft only 15 years back, right? And you have had the opportunity to be at these two very interesting time frames, like 15 years back and now at Microsoft. What are some key cultural shifts or major positive things that you have noticed that has changed from, say, 2007 to now? Anything specific that you have noticed? And we have all seen how transformational Microsoft's growth has been under Satya over the last few years. But as someone who has worked there within the company, how has your landscape shifted over the years?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a term internally for people like me that we call the boomerangs, because, the second time in Microsoft, and I'm one of those. And, it in some ways, there's a lot different and a lot common, and I'll touch upon both of those. What stays common is actually the quality of people. I think that is definitely not something that, people 15 years ago that I worked with were not as good as they are now. In fact, a lot of the same people are still around. I think what changes is just the mindset and the culture. And I think you alluded to this. Satya has been, and his leadership team, not just him alone, have been instrumental in making that transformation. And so take the same set of people and you look at, hey, what changed? How come the outcomes are so much better now than they were before? And that's where you kind of realize the power of culture and how you approach problems and opportunities plays such a big role. And that's what Satya has done. I would say there's less of hubris, which is what I found when I was there first time, where, it almost felt like the Microsoft at that time kind of felt entitled to succeed, whereas now it's a lot more open, hungrier. They talk about growth mindset, and I feel it. People are very candid about things that they're working on, where they fall short, how they're going to improve it. And that just shift, I think, has led to really, really good outcomes.
I think it's interesting and not surprising at all that you mentioned that there's a term called boomerang within Microsoft, because I was reading your Microsoft announcement post when you decided that you are joining Microsoft back. A lot of people in the comments were saying that they've done the same, or the people who were there earlier are still the same and they were welcoming you. So it's insane to see the culture that the company has built. We'll now go a few years before to your stint at Facebook, and you worked on the newsfeed, which is probably a lot of people have said that it's a digital surface that had the maximum eyeballs, right? A product that has so much impact globally for billions of people. And when it was launched, I remember it faced such massive backlash, and Mark kind of explained his rationale behind building it, and eventually it turned out to be one of the most game-changing products for Facebook. What are some insights from building the newsfeed? Because again, it's one of the products that is so central to literally every other social product that we see right now. What are some insights from those days?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say feed almost is a primitive, right? You see across majority of the products, social products, it's an aggregation, primitive, so to speak, right? Like it's a surface that brings content together, which now in hindsight, you brought up that incident where when it was first launched, a lot of people were up in arms against newsfeed, right? Because it was atypical, and now it seems so obvious. And, the beauty of some of these innovations are always like looking back, they seem obvious, but, when they're first introduced, it's always challenging. Look, I think, the way to think about feed is both in terms of, aggregation, but like the way you make it work for the user is just relevance and understanding the user better. Because, your feed on any given product, whether it's Facebook or any other social product, will look very different from my feed based on our interests, our friends, things that you care about. And that is where I think you start to realize that how much of optimization and constant learning you go through in terms of ranking and relevance, and people's needs and interests shift as well. They're not static, right? Aditya, who was, in school is different from a professional, and as you go along in your journey of your life, right, those things change, and how do you keep up with that? I think that's kind of the key unlock here, right? So one way to think about. The other is it's a very powerful distribution mechanism, and that comes with responsibility. And, you see that with the impact it can have. If you have a new kind of product or format, like for Facebook, stories, when it was an emerging format, just the distribution and feed made it something that people noticed, got aware of, became aware of, and then started, using that new format themselves. So it has a massive impact in terms of what gets distributed, what gets adopted. On the flip side, though, that's also comes with some responsibility, right? Like misinformation was a problem, what kind of content gets. And so, when you look at seed as a primitive, I think those are the two lenses to think about, which is how can you make it super personalized and relevant at all times for a given user? And with distribution, what principles do you have? How do you insert something that's emergent, both in content or features or formats, in a responsible way, right? So that's the constant balance you're trying to find. Because, let's take the example of Reels, right? And you might not be very familiar with short form content, and there's a way to introduce you to that, which is at the intersection of that personalization and distribution. And I think that's always the balance you're trying to strike when you're building feed across everything, like how you do ranking, how you build features, how you think of quality of content. You're really trying to get that sweet spot right.
Yeah. And you touched upon these principles that you hold while building a product as massive and something that holds so much responsibility, right? Like you said, there could be everything from, say, fake news to inappropriate content to whatnot, right? If you could maybe share what principles go behind building a product like this, maybe top 3 that come to your mind right now, that'll be amazing. Just to know, get a perspective behind the scenes. Because all we see are ever-changing feed. Like you said, everyone's feed is different. We keep seeing minor tweaks that happen, and hundreds and thousands of changes that would happen at a algorithmic level separately as well, right? So, any key principles that you remember holding very, very sacredly while building feeds?
So I'll answer it in 2 parts, right? In terms of principles, there are some very clear principles that are articulated. And in this case, you're talking about the Facebook's example, they call it as part of their community guidelines and standards, right? Terrorism-related content is bad, or, illegal drugs and all of those things, that there is no gray area. What is bad, you just need to keep it out in the system. So the principles around that are pretty clear, pretty not controversial. I think where it gets tricky is things that fall in the gray area, where somebody's opinion could be harmful. It could be factually incorrect, but half correct. And, people might believe for or against, and how does that content show up in the platform? And that's a very nuanced topic, right? We can talk about it for a long time.
Shit.
But I think, I would say in some ways, have been clear about not just your responsibility as a user, but the impact it has on others. That's the principle you have to withhold, right? There's free expression, but there's also what can it do to others if it's misinformed, and being very clear about impact to others versus just an individual user. That's kind of how you would tread that line. The second thing to think about, I think, is it also depends a lot on what you think your metrics are, what you're trying to try, what your goal is. And that results in a very different composition of feed, right? If I'm trying to optimize for time spent, I might show you a lot more videos than content from friends. And so if your metrics are not very principle-based, then the incentives for all the teams to do the work changes, right? And so you want to make sure the metric you put is actually something you believe in. Your North Star is something you believe in, and then make sure product changes map to that.
Awesome. We'll go a few more years down the lane now at Google, where you were heading real-time communications and you worked on a string of products, including Hangouts, Duo, Allo, a lot of which culminated into what we see as Google Meet right now, right? A lot of foundational work that happened several years ago has eventually had a massive payoff, and the pandemic hit and Google Meet grew faster than ever. It's now probably the de facto tool where people do video calls and stuff like that. So it has been very integral. But what is the culture at Google that lets it take such long bets years in advance, right? Because this must be, I'm assuming, in 2015, 16-ish, when you were working on these products, and now cut to 7-8 years later, it's one of the most mainstream products. So what is the culture in place at Google that lets you all work on things with such a long horizon on mind?
Yeah. Look, I think the critics would argue that Google has had a fumble messaging strategy, and there's some truths to it, right? And I think I'll answer this question in 2 parts, right? What is the cultural part of it? In some ways, Google is willing to fail, right? Willing to both create products and sunset them. Now, it does come with a cost, right? It does come with a cost that sometimes You might get a handful of users who really liked a product that you launched, but it might not get traction and they end up kind of stopping that. So, but in aggregate, if you look at a part of their culture, which has been this willingness to try things and be honest about what's not working. And, when I worked there, of all the products you mentioned, some of them work and some of them were utter failures and they stopped. And I'd say this to people all the time that the failure actually teaches you more than the products that worked out, right? So kind of in terms of learnings. But I think that too, in my mind, is just the willingness to stick with it and not be afraid to fail has yielded them dividends, not just in communications, but in a variety of places. So that's the key in my mind. I think oftentimes, especially in the larger companies, there's just so much of emphasis on something working out that you kind of use the look. You can never always get it right. That's as simple as that. No matter how smart a group of people or the strategy where the company resources are. You have the Amazon phone, and every company has a list of favorite product. But the cultures that kind of embrace that and celebrate that eventually might get the things right. And I think this is one of those cases. Lots of false starts, lots of attempts, things getting shut down. But I think eventually you get to a place where the product is useful and users likes.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that resonates even outside as well, right? There's a very popular website called killedbygoogle.com, which lists down all the products that Google has killed over the years. But it goes on to say that they try a bunch of different things, and things that become big, but things that don't scale up eventually die. And that's a fair culture to build, right? And since you have worked on like these massive companies at leadership levels and these companies are culturally so different, have varied product building strategies, like you were saying in Google's case, right? If you were to pick the best product practice from each company and share a bit about that, I think it will give us a bird's eye view of how the world's best companies build products.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think Meta is incredibly good at understanding how to do growth. Right, I think that's one of the things that stands out for them. How to do products in consumer, everything. They have a very, very strong data science keen and discipline. So the two things I would say at Meta that really stand out, one is their prowess and growth, and the second I would say is they're really good at having cross-functional input into product buildings. Data science, design, mechanics, engineers, more so than any other company I have seen have an equal seat at the table when deciding on kind of product roadmaps and product iteration. So that's been really, really good. Google, I would say the engineering infrastructure is probably, one of the best in the world. And, they have a culture that really obsesses about product resilience, right? Fast is better than slow. It's one of their four principles, right? When it comes to speed, when it comes to stability, and it's supported by the great infra that they have built. But there's a culture of like really focusing on product excellence, getting every pixel, every optimized speed, performance right, and I think they do that better than I would say most people. Microsoft has just a platform notion built in its DNA, right? We build platforms, we enable others, so to speak, right? And that's been true since the early Windows days to even now. If you look at Azure, if you look at any product like Teams that I work on, it always helps support an ecosystem around it, right? The third-party developers can plug in, there's resellers, there's channel partners. People can build businesses on top of kind of Microsoft suite of products. And I think they do that the best in the world, right? So, there's obviously a lot of these things are ingrained in the company DNA that really excel at. And so those are the ones that stand out for me across these three companies.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing this. So if someone's looking to build out a product team or a product org within their companies, they know exactly what to cherry pick from each of these companies now to build. Amit, so you have made some incredible career moves over the last few years, and I wanted to understand some behind the scenes of this decision making process. I was checking out one of your LinkedIn posts. Probably it has got some 30,000 likes. So one of your most popular posts on LinkedIn. I don't want to put you in a spot here, but I have it open in front of me, and I'm going to read like a few lines, few snippets from there, and maybe you can dive a little bit deeper on that, and also share a bit more about how you made each of your career choices and how those have, eventually helped you reach where you have reached. So it says careers are not linear. They are sinusoidal, full of ups and downs. Don't let the LinkedIn profiles fool you. That's the first one. And second one, there's no right path. Some people will zigzag, some people will take the straight road. Don't emulate, blaze your own trail, right? So with that, I'll maybe let you fill in the blanks and help us read between the lines better, and also explain your career choices here.
Yeah. So first I'll be very honest. It's not like I have some master career plan. Okay, I've never had this. And I know a lot of people have this advice about, please do steps ahead and, work backwards and where you want to be. And I wish I could tell you I had anything like that. Okay, that's the very honest truth. I don't know what I'll do next. From here on out, I have no idea. Okay. So a lot of these things that happen in the hindsight, when I look back, they all come together and seem better than they felt in the moment. Okay. And I made some of these transitions were mostly based on where I thought my learning curve was just plateauing, and where I was doing the same thing, same set of challenges I was working on that maybe I was doing 1 year ago or 2 years ago, right? And when I felt that, I just got uneasy and I said, you know what, I still need to push myself to grow. Grow not in just the title or whatever compensation point, because see, a lot of these moves, don't like give you outsized compensation, especially as you get to the senior level. It's very competitive. But more in terms growth in terms of just what I'm learning. Am I learning a new set of skills? Have I worked on a new challenge? So that's what I've held constant when I look back, which is I was at Google at a point where I thought, I'm now going to be doing the same thing. I've been building a bunch of 0 to 1 products. I need to learn how to work on a scaled product. And when the opportunity came, I moved to Facebook. There was similar thinking when I moved to Microsoft and things like that. So that's what I've done. Now, there are certain things that have directionally always been right for me, which is I'm now product management. Obviously I want to further my career in that, learn more, get more scope. All of us have that ambition. That's been constant, but I don't have a belief for that. Okay. And so when I tell people, when folks ask me how to think about their career planning, there are various ways to approach this. And, there are way better gurus on career stuff that can tell you like how to product manage your career and work backwards and have this thing. But I'm just going to honestly share how I have approached, which is if you be stuck in terms of your learning, try to shake it up. And, as long as you're optimizing for constantly pushing and growing and have a broad definition of growth, then I think you'll make the right moves and eventually it'll all add up because you kind of build on what you know and keep growing, right? So that's my only insight that I have. At some point, if I feel in Microsoft I'm plateauing, I'm stuck, I'm not learning anything new, I'll change it up. And look, change doesn't also have to be, you have to go find a new job at a different company. You can make changes within your company, where you can find challenge. You can make changes within your team and say, hey, I've been doing similar projects. I need to do something else. And if you keep pushing yourself, I think the career just adds. So that's kind of my first insight. When I talked about sinusoidal waves and kind of linear, what I spent was like, we all put things in resumes and in LinkedIn's that chronologically make you feel like all these are such beautiful, linear, one after the other move. And the reality is different. All of us are different. Mine is different too, right? I've gotten rejected in interviews in the same companies that I work in later successfully. I've been stuck at a level and, it's like, hey, why am I not getting promoted? What's going on? I'm doing everything right. I've gotten reorged. I've had managers that changes every 3 months. I've gone through all of these things. And not just me, all of us go through that. I don't put that on my LinkedIn. I don't say that the first year in this company was horrible because I had 11 managers in 6 months. But those things are happening, right? That's what I meant, which is all of us will go through these setbacks. Some will be in your control, some won't be in your control. And just be aware of that. Do not lose hope when you feel like things are not going your way, is what I was trying to report. That they're not linear, you'll have setbacks, you feel sometimes you're going backward. I have felt that. And I can speak for many people, many leaders I know, Yeah, so, just knowing that I think is important because that brings that resilience for you. And I mentioned in that post, like playing the long game. If you all think about our careers being whatever set you work now, let's assume 30, 35 years, right? Then when you have that perspective, then things that bother you in the short term, did I get promoted 6 months too late? Did I get something the way I wanted 1 year too late? They don't come across as deep setbacks because it's long. That's what I meant by those ones.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing this so candidly and honestly. Because everyone that sees a LinkedIn profile, like you said, must be thinking that, hey, this seems like a very meticulously planned process. And thanks for debunking that for us. One of the interesting points that you mentioned is that you have no playbook whatsoever for thinking about these choices. But for example, when you're thinking about your very next move, right? For example, when you chose to join Microsoft, I'm pretty sure you would have weighed in a bunch of other options and then decided that, hey, this is the best choice for me for the next 2 years. When you're making a choice like that, say your very next career move, are there a few pointers in your mind that you hold thinking that, hey, if this role meets these criterias, or this is a checklist that I have, that if this role meets all these requirements, this is like a sure shot decision?
Yeah, I think, if I hear you correctly the other day, I think there's like two different versions in this, right? One is, how should we think about playbook? And when I say playbook, it's, I don't have like which company I'm going to join at what point. That's on the playbook I had. But I do think I have, and all of us should have some amount of intentionality on how you think about building on top of your skill set. So for example, I have always focused on staying in the consumer space. Okay. I started with building a bunch of 0 to 1 products, and I felt like I got really some good set of skills there. I didn't have skills on how to work on a skill into product, right? Where the trade-offs are a lot different, when you can't just innovate, but you have to optimize as well. So I wanted to learn that. That's an experience I wanted. Then, layer on top of that, like, not only how do you make a impact with the product, but impact to the larger team and the culture, right? That's something that I wanted to layer on top of that. So when I say, have intentionality, have growth plans. Like, how do you build on what you're learning? If you're becoming, let's say, security expert, you're in the security space, right? Write down, like, what are the set of things you need to keep learning to become the eventual leader that you want to be. So that's the intentionality you should have. But be open to taking different paths to that. That could be in this current company. It could mean going to a smaller one, a bigger one, whatever gives you that set of skills. So that's kind of how it's deployment. Second question was around
choosing the very next move. So you have like a
what
checklist
are the
to.
yeah. I think, look, it's important that, and we've touched upon this earlier part of the interview, that so the first and foremost is you are excited about that, the opportunity, growth opportunity. The second is definitely the people and the culture. I think if you really boil it down, all of us in the software business, it's really a people business. I mean, think about what we all do, okay? And I'm talking about people building software. We have the same set of coding tools and capabilities and the same AI APIs that we want to call, the same ways to deploy. All those tools, all those mechanics exist are accessible to majority of us, whether you're in India, you're a startup in the US or somewhere else. The way you kind of put those capabilities together requires a bunch of people coming together. And if you think about your day-to-day as a product manager, I would even say most of the problems you grapple with are people problems. How to influence others, how to work with the designer, how to be previously aligned, how to communicate, how to convince someone. You're not talking about day-to-day technical problems as much as you're saying, how do you bring people together to make something? And when you realize that, like the real work for us is about people and bringing them together to take all the amazing technology that exists and make something magical out of it, then you start to realize the people you work with is super important, right? And so, who's your manager going to be, what the culture is, those things start to matter a lot, because the healthier it is, the more you can focus on building a problem. So, I think that's like the number one criteria in my mind. Obviously, I'm not going to be naive to say like compensation and all of that doesn't matter. That should matter. Make sure you're getting paid for what you deserve, so to speak. But we don't make that the only thing at the expense of other things like us.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing this. So the next question is like a community ask or a community favorite. It's about hiring, right? Over the years, Amit, you would have hired hundreds of people across levels, across different stages of their careers, your careers as well, right? And while doing that, I'm sure you would have developed some instincts that comes with such a massive experience, right? Are there any key markers or traits that you have seen a very high correlation with success in careers that you can probably identify in interviews? And I'm also asking this from a point of view of someone applying for interviews, right? Someone should keep these things in mind, saying that, hey, if I can showcase it or portray it in a better way, or if I can hone these traits better, I have a better shot at success.
Yeah. The one thing I would say, it's a great question, Aditya. The one thing I would say is, and there are various terms for this, which is, people showing a lot of initiative. And I think some call it, you have an agency. I love this Hindi term for this, which is called jugaad, right? Which is being resourceful under all constraints.
Figuring out stuff, yeah.
Figuring out. And are you a self-starter? Do you have that intrinsic drive or not? To me, that one quality actually highly correlated to a successful product career. Okay. And then what I mean by that really is, all skills being constant. Customers, the data, the design, all of that along. You kind of need to assess that. But really what I've seen separates the really good pianists from the average ones is the people who are large. Who, and the way, some examples of that, who could never waiting for someone else to solve no problem. Who can figure out, who don't let constraints get them well. Because look, every company has constraints, even these big tech companies. I cannot tell you how many times I hear the same complaints about, we don't have enough resources, you don't have enough engineers. That was true in the small startup as well, and that's true at Microsoft as well. So, these problems never go away. But the people who look at these problems and say, I know there's a way around how to build around that, how to get over the hurdle, and I have that intrinsic drive to do that. Look, that is what I think is the number one trait. Is like how you approach. And
Awesome.
so, in interviews, I mean, it's not easy to draw that out.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
can, have you worked on a project before? If that thing has been voiced for you, are you type of the person who tinkers with technology on the weekends, who builds something, not just products, but in the community? Have you shown some initiative to organize a group of people to make something better, right? I look for all these cues at work or in life to say like, hey, does this person have the spark to, ignite and create the fire, so to speak, by themselves? Because I always think those people do wonderful well.
Yeah. Are there any such interesting questions that you normally ask candidates, like something that acts as a filter, or probably questions that you have been asked in an interview, which you thought that there's
let
a
me
great
think about
question?
that. So I tend to ask open-ended questions sometimes, and then I can take it whenever. So one of the questions I asked was, and I think I wrote about this in LinkedIn as well, I asked people, if I give you 6 months and a small little engineering team, this is a PM interview question, what would you build? Right? And it's fascinating to see the different answers. Because, some candidates will just walk me through the process. They've probably read this in some PM interview book, how we do custom research and synthesize the existing data and the problems and, all good points, but it's really about process. Okay? And there are some candidates who I get who I think probably have worked in a big company for a long time, who will say things like, I want to ask my EB what's the most important thing. Things like that. So I get to it. But then every once in a while I get a candidate who's like, you know what? I have this problem that's been, staring at me for a really, really long time. I really want to go solve it. Let me tell you what the problem is. Here's how I'm going to solve it. And I'm like, wait, this is the kind of PM I want for the team, right? They're not just rattling off the process. They're not telling me how they're going to rely on others to tell them what to do. My question is very open-ended. And I want to see, what kind of initiative do you come up with? And so that's just one of the questions. I have a few like this where I can kind of mold it based on what the interviewee is saying. But, that's the one example.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing this. Amit, another thing that has come up multiple times in this interview has been your writing, right? You write a lot, and in fact, your LinkedIn bio says that you write because you want others to learn from the mistakes that you're making, and that's very great of you that you keep sharing your learnings as you go. Right? How is writing? I ask this because I'm a writer as well. But how has writing impacted your career? And since product as a vertical depends so much on, aligning people well, managing stakeholders, communicating things in the right way, how has writing shaped your career over the years?
Yeah. So I'll give you a two-part answer, right? One is writing is like probably the most important thing and was a product manager, right? I mean, if you think about it, as PMs, we don't write code, production code. We don't bring designs, right? We're not going every day and doing research. What is our job here? Our job really is to bring clarity, on what needs to be done, why it needs to be done. And there's no better way to enforce that clarity, that writing, because it makes you think better and it lets others respond to kind of like thinking. So, number one skill, I always tell people you should write a lot as a PM. That's the only tool they can have. On the LinkedIn writing, look, man, I started writing just to share some of the insights. And I'll tell you, the only reason I did that was, through my career, I made so many mistakes, and I felt like, hey, why didn't somebody tell me? Like, in hindsight, it's like, sheesh, if I had only known, I wouldn't have done that. And I was like, those moments I should share. Maybe it'll be useful to someone, and that's like my only motivation. I'm not planning to create a newsletter or a podcast. Not that those are bad things, but I just don't have the time to do that. So every once in a while, if I feel like there's some learnings I have, I share it. I hope somebody finds it useful in their day-to-day work. That's a good number one for me. You can answer. That's how I approach it.
Absolutely. And please keep writing. All of us learn so much from it. And I was seeing the comments and hundreds of people find it so useful, your posts and all the learnings that you share. So, and like you said, it's probably the best way to create more impact out of the work that you are doing, right? Because writing something might take you, say, a day or so, but then it impacts so many people's lives and probably has potential to change their careers in better ways, right? So thanks again for putting out your learnings out there.
Awesome.
So Amit, I have a lot of questions, but we are right at the brink of it. So I'll probably ask as a final question here. Let's go back 15 years in time, right? Let's say we are at the first day at Microsoft for you, right out of college, and knowing what you know today and a stellar career that you've had in more than a decade now. If you get to spend 2 minutes with a younger Amit, what would you say to him?
What a great question. Waste less time. Do you think?
Why do you say that?
It's okay. I look, I have 2 kids now, and a family. Life gets really full, your work expands. And it's incredible how much, people in my stage, the career and life have to get done one day. Okay, there's just so much demand for your time, both from family and from work. And so when I look back, I was like, what was I doing when I was very young? How did I spend my time? And there are times where I was like, I could have better used that time. I could have better used those weekends. I could have better used my spare time in taking more risks, building more things, learning more things, That's the only advice I would give myself, just like value your time a lot more, because it becomes, it starts to compress as you go on in your career.
Absolutely. Amit, I think you are being too harsh on yourself here. You have had a career that probably people would do anything to get. So, yeah, again, like we all admire the trajectory that you have had a lot, along with the learnings that you've shared over this interview, as well as, in our events and at large at LinkedIn. So, awesome. Thanks for those
Thank
words
you.
of wisdom there. And
Thanks.
we'll...
You're being quite kind, and just like that, I've had a couple of lucky breaks, and I know you're early in your career, but you're going to have those, and one day you will be sharing your insights. So I wish you the best. I wish everybody who's listening and better. All of you to kind of continue learning, grow.
Awesome. Amit, before we let you go, we do like a fun rapid fire to end it on a high note. It'll not be too serious, but it'll be something that hopefully brings out the fun side of you. So I'll ask you to pick a favorite product from each of the companies that you have worked at, right? So we'll go with Facebook, Google, and then Microsoft. You can't name the products that you have personally worked on. So go for
let's
it.
see, Google Photos for sure. I love that product. I organize all my pictures, so it's to any fan. At Meta, I'd say what's my favorite product. But we get the simplicity with almonds photo that you want and become Microsoft Teams, man. Teams, I did. Teams that I can't
on
do
Teams,
one
yeah.
yeah. I would say LinkedIn is actually my favorite Microsoft product. In terms of my personal, what value I get at my.
Amazing. Next question. An app you wish existed, but it doesn't right now. It could be like anything.
Planet Run for me. I think that's been, here's my criteria, here's my budget, that's what I like to see, figure it out for me. I think we're getting close. I tried that with ChatGPT a bunch of times, but there's still some things lacking, right? That would be like the map with and so that consume it.
Awesome. You mentioned GPT. So my next question is, what's your favorite AI tool of late? I'm pretty sure you would have been tinkering around with a lot. So any favorites there?
I'll be honest, like the most useful one I found. I mean, I've been playing with a lot of them, fun. But in terms of sheer value in my advice, if I have to be biased here with the meeting co-pilot that we have, and things, it's ability to generate, summaries from the meeting, AIs for people, putting on the data. That's my max seconds.
Perfect. Last question there. Since you write a lot, I think you read a lot too as well. What are your most favorite underrated reads? It could be either fiction, non-fiction, anything, like top 3.
Not underrated, but I'll tell you the 3 books I always keep, and I've reread them a bunch of times. There's a book called The Culture Code, which I really like. And it's about teams, culture, organizations, and how to build and foster what makes it great. It's a fantastic book. I keep Ben Horowitz's The Hard Things About Hard Things, right? That book. I use it more as a reference because every time I'm struggling with something, I can go to that chapter and read it. And then my online favorite is a really small book called, there was a basketball coach, it was John Wooden, who coached in UCLA basketball team. And he was an amazing coach and an amazing leader. And he has this small book called, Lifetime Learnings on and off the field, which is like a really beautiful set of principles on how we can approach your life and career that I really like, and I always give you to people, so that's the best time to look out.
Perfect. I'll check out the last one. I've read the first 2, but the next one, the last one goes to my to read list. Thanks again, Amit. We'll not hold you too long for now, but thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for being so candid and honest over this interview, but being so supportive and helpful for the community as always. We'd love to have you again. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, Aditya, for having me.